morning. How's everyone today? It's still kind of yucky outside. I think we lost spring. I want spring to come back, don't you? Well, do you remember what happened yesterday? We had a very romantic dance going on in the meadow. And now we might think it was a dream, or we don't really know whether anything really happened. But let's see what happens today. Chapter 9, The Rain Falls. Poppy and Edith trudged along in silence, with her mind taken up by the thoughts of the mouse with whom she had danced. She was grateful for the quiet. How so very much like Ragweed he was, and yet how different. While they looked alike, the stranger seemed softer, gentler than the bold, headstrong Ragweed she had known. Certainly this mouse was more romantic. Was he, Poppy kept wondering, a dream or not? If he was a dream, he was the best dream she'd ever had. Still, she hoped he was real. If her dance partner had been real, how could she find him again? Of course, it was impossible that he had been Ragweed, but the mouse clearly was a golden mouse. If there was one golden mouse in the area, perhaps there would be others. Did that mean she was nearing Ragweed's home? As they walked, Poppy hummed the snippet of tune she had composed for her dance. So preoccupied was Poppy by her musings that she failed to notice that Edith was frowning and grumbling, even more than usual. "What's that noise?" he suddenly asked. "It's me humming. I'm in no mood for music." "How come?" Forget it." Poppy paused to look at her friend closely. There was a look in his eyes she had never seen before. "Edith," she said, suddenly alarmed. "What is it?" Edith looked a little sheepish. Bumblebee flunk. Never mind." Poppy offered a worried glance, but chose to ask no more questions. In any case, she preferred to think about her dance. Once again, she began to hum her tune. The two friends continued west. When on occasion they met others on the path, a mole, a water rat, Poppy asked if they'd ever heard of the brook. Much advice was offered, directions were given, and sure enough, another brook was found, small and calm. It was very much what Poppy imagined she was looking for. To her disappointment, no golden mice lived thereabout. A resident otter did inform Poppy and Edith there was another pretty shallow brook no more than 2 hills beyond in that direction. The otter pointed due west. "I bet we find the right one this time," Poppy, ever hopeful, said to Edith as they started again. Edith grew even more gloomy. Though the day had begun bright and clear, the sky had turned gray and cloudy, the air heavy. Treetops flicked and bobbed in a humid breeze. Birds flew high and fast. Clearly, a storm was coming. With much new urgency, Poppy and Edith trudged toward the crest of the second hill. "Maybe when we get to the top, we'll see the brook that the otter mentioned," Poppy said. "Soon as we get to the top of the hill," Edith proclaimed, "I'm going back home." "Why?" "I'm sick of walking," the porcupine replied. From the crest of the hill, they looked down into a valley. At the very bottom was a pond. No brook, Iris said with palpable relief. Let's go home. Well, actually, Poppy pointed. There's a brook leading into the pond and out of it. Iris muttered something unintelligible under his breath. Then he said, it's going to rain. Iris, Poppy said, rain won't hurt us. I'm going to check that brook. Even as they stood, drops began to fall. At first, it came slowly, great plops of water. Then, while lightning cracked off to the distant north and thunder followed, a steady drizzle began to fall. Iris wheeled about and moved toward a clump of trees. Where are you going? Poppy called. Where do you think, Toadwort? Out of the rain. Iris, I want to explore that brook. Buzzard fraps, the porcupine muttered. Poppy watched Iris go. Will you promise to stay there until I search a bit? She called after him. I never promise anything. How will I know where you are? Watch my tracks. Poppy waited until Iris reached a cottonwood tree and started to climb it. She noted its position, then hurried down the path. By now, the rain was falling steadily. For his part, Iris looked around, saw which way Poppy was going, down the other side of the hill, then curled himself into a tight ball and closed his eyes. I should never have come, he murmured. Ragweed, nothing but ragweed. I thought I was her best friend. Poppy was approaching the pond. Halfway down the hill, she could see that it had been created by beavers. At one end was a dam, and Poppy could even observe a number of beavers hard at work. Some were swimming upon the pond's surface. Others were laboring on lodges. A few, still working on the main dam, built it higher. At the far end of the pond, a particularly large fat beaver was gnawing upon the trunk of an aspen tree. There was a sharp crack as the tree snapped and tumbled to earth, landing with a crash. At the sound, all the beavers in the pond looked around. When they saw it was a tree that had fallen, they began to slap the pond's surface with their tails. Poppy, standing in the rain looking on, heard someone say, awful, just awful. She turned. Sitting beneath a large toadstool protected from the rain was a golden mouse. Poppy's heart fluttered. For an instant, she thought it was the one with whom she had danced. Then she saw that this mouse, though tall and thin, was a female. Hello, Poppy said. The mouse looked beyond Poppy. Oh, hi, she said. She sounded unhappy. Do you live around here? Poppy asked. Yes. Are there a lot of you around? Poppy inquired. I mean, golden mice? The mouse looked down at herself as she had never considered the question before. I suppose. My name is Poppy, Poppy said. I'm a deer mouse. My name is Thistle, said the other. How come you're standing in the rain? Oh, right, I am. May I join you? Sure. Poppy darted under the cover of the toadstool. Thistle, making room, added, Where are you from? Back east, over by Dimwood Forest. Never heard of it, Thistle said with polite indifference. She had turned back to stare down at the pond. Water dripped from around the edges of the toadstool like a tattered curtain. I hate beavers, Thistle said. Why? When they made the pond, they ruined everything for everybody. The brook used to be so cool. Poppy's heart gave a lurch. Is that what you called it? She asked, her voice faltering. The brook? Thistle nodded. You wouldn't think it used to be small and calm. Look at it now, she said sadly. Then she added, our home was right on the banks of the brook. No more flooded out. We had to move away because of them. Poppy was trying to restrain her growing excitement. Thistle, Poppy said nervously. What? Does the name ragweed mean anything to you? Thistle had been gazing mournfully down at the pond. At the name she whirled about. Ragweed, she cried. That's my brother. Do you know him? Have you seen him? Have you any idea where he is? Is he coming back? I can't tell you how much we need him. Instead of answering Thistle's barrage of questions, Poppy asked one of her own. Are your parents named Clover and Valerian? How did you know? Ragweed must have told you. But that means you do know him. Oh man, you gotta see my parents. Our nest isn't far, she went on. Come on, please tell me about Ragweed. What's he doing? You don't know how much we miss him. Do you know when he's coming back? We really need him to come back. I've got tons of brothers, but Ragweed's the best. Managed to push down her emotions, but speaking in a strained voice, Poppy said, I think I'd better talk to your parents. Thistle darted into the rain. I'll take you. What did you say your name was? Poppy. Poppy, you won't believe how glad my parents will be to see you. With Thistle looking over her shoulder to make sure Poppy was following, the two mice made their way through the rain along a path that led uphill from the pond. The farther they went, the more nervous Poppy became. It's just over here, Thistle kept calling. They had come to a large boulder embedded in an outcropping of earth. A variety of shrubs and flowers rimmed the rock. In the rain, they seemed shrunken and cold. Poppy herself was thoroughly soaked, as well as trembling. The wetness came from the rain, but the trembling came from her emotions. Though Thistle was just as wet, she was too excited to notice Poppy's state. Just follow me, the young mouse said, darting along the base of the rock, then plunging into the small hole, which was screened by some flowering rose crown. At the entry hole, Poppy paused to give herself strength. Why did I ever want to do this, she wondered. Thistle popped back up out of the hole. Come on, she called, then plunged down the tunnel again. A reluctant Poppy followed her at a lower pace. She could hear Thistle yell, Ma, Pa, everyone, guess what? Someone's come with news about Ragweed. Full of dread, wishing the tunnel were 100 miles long, Poppy crept the whole way. All the same, within moments, she entered the nest. At a glance, Poppy saw the nest for what it was, a single shabby room stuffed with golden mice. Golden mice tend to be bigger than deer mice. So Poppy's first sensation was not only that there was a lot of them, but that they all seemed quite large. But Poppy had not the slightest doubt that she was in the presence of Ragweed's family. The resemblance was uncanny. It was as if she were in a room full of familiar ghosts. She felt weak. There were 2 adults, Clover and Valerian, plus 11 children. The children ranged from fully grown young adults to squeaking infants, one of which was being burped on Clover's shoulder. When Poppy entered the nest, the golden mice stared at her twitching ears and wide eyes. "This is Poppy," Thistle announced excitedly. "How do," Valerian said, standing tall and thin and fussing with his whiskers. There was a tremor in his voice. Clover, very pale, said nothing. Her black eyes, open wide, just stared at Poppy. Her whiskers were shaking. Thistle cried, "Poppy knows all about Ragweed, don't you?" Poppy was so choked with emotion, it was all she could do to nod a response and gaze from face to face. Suddenly she stopped. At the back of the pack was the mouse she had danced with. There was the same sweet, soft, noble face, the same right ear with a notch. Their eyes met and held. Poppy's heart fluttered. Grief, joy, relief, sadness, all mingled, but in such confusion she hardly knew what she felt. She lowered her eyes. Valerian, his voice husky, spoke out, "My dear Miss Mouse, do you have some news about our son, Ragweed?" "Yes," Poppy managed to say. "What's happened to him?" Clover blurted out. When is he coming home?" Poppy found it impossible to speak. Instead, she sought out the face of her dancing partner. Once again, their eyes met. How she wished he were not there. How she wished she was not going to say what she had to say. "Please," she heard Clover beg, as if from distant place, "I really must know." As Clover spoke, she stood up, infant still in her arms, and reached a paw to touch Valerian, as if she were in need of steadying. Her round, heavy body seemed uncertain on her stumpy legs. Poppy turned back to Clover. "I'm afraid, Ragweed." The next word stuck. She could not speak the word. She had to force it out. "Ragweed is dead," she finally said, her voice tiny. Utter silence. "Dead?" A small voice, a youngster's, echoed. "Dead?" Clover repeated. Poppy could only nod yes. Valerian cleared his throat. "But how?" he managed to ask. "An owl killed him." "An owl?" someone said. Then all was silence again. Suddenly Clover sat down. "My own poor, sweet boy," she sobbed. "Can you tell us more?" Valerian asked in a choked voice. Poppy closed her eyes. When she opened them, she sought out the face of the mouse with whom she had danced. When she found it, it was full of awful, sadness. We were in love, Poppy said. We were going to marry. Oh my, Clover murmured, putting a paw to her trembling lips. Valerian swallowed hard, cleared his throat, and said, Poppy, we thank you for coming and telling us. He wiped a tear from one cheek, then the other. I thought you'd want to know, Poppy said softly. That's why I came. The golden mice stared at Poppy as if she had spoken a strange language. Clover, letting escape a small squeak, even as she stroked the baby she was holding, said, It's a trembling thing to live beyond your own children. With great effort, Valerian drew himself up. Poppy, it was generous of you to come so far to bring us the news. You must be tired. I'm all right, Poppy said. You're welcome to stay with us as long as you like, he added. This is not where Ragweed was brought up. We've fallen on hard times, but our nest is your nest. The beavers sank our nest. One of the young mice shouted. All of the children began to talk at once. Poppy, I must ask you something, Clover suddenly said. In an instant, the nest became quiet again. Yes, please, Poppy said. I hope you loved my son very much, Clover said. Poppy did not answer right away. Instead, she looked down at her toes, then up and around, seeking the face of the one with whom she had danced. He was gazing at her with a look of profound pain. Did you love him? Clover pressed. The question seemed urgent. Yes, Poppy said, I did, very much. Oh, my dear, Clover cried, thrusting the baby she'd been holding into Valerian's paws. She rushed over to Poppy and gave her an engulfing hug. Poppy hugged her back. As she did, she saw from the corner of an eye the mouths she had danced with, his face awash with grief, rush past and fling himself up the tunnel. Goodness, such a sad chapter. How do you think Rye feels right now? He's probably got mixed thoughts too, doesn't he? Wow. Let's see what happens in chapter 10. Erith has some thoughts. Hunched on his perch in the cottonwood tree, and I have a connection. I have a cottonwood tree just on the other side of the fence in my backyard, and cottonwood trees make such a mess. Sometimes the cotton comes down so heavy out of cottonwood trees that it looks like it's snowing in the backyard in the middle of summer. Erith stared gloomily at the falling rain. Lightning cracked overhead. Thunder rumbled. The world had become gray and sodden. I hate water, Erith proclaimed, to nobody in particular. In fact, he murmured, I hate everything. Again and again, he wished he were back home in his smelly log in Dimwood Forest. It was dry there. It was quiet. He was alone. Nothing, no one bothered him. What Whatever made me come here, he kept asking himself. Poppy did. She forced me to come. Mouse frickets, he murmured. Double mouse frickets. Quadruple mouse frickets. From directly over his head, a pool of water had collected in the fold of a leaf and fell on his face. That's enough, Iris shouted with a furious shake of his head. I'm going home. Snarling and hissing, he scrambled down the tree. Once on soggy ground, he paused. The storm appeared to be growing worse. The rain was falling harder and faster. If he went, he would get soaked. When a wind shook the tree, causing a cascade of water to plop on his head, he moaned. If he stayed, he would get soaked. Where was that foolish mouse? Why did he even bother with her? If I go, it will teach her a lesson. If I teach her a lesson, she'll get upset with me, he told himself. If she gets upset, she'll scold me. Then I'll feel bad. Why should I care? She's just a friend. No, he corrected himself, I have no friends. I don't want any friends. Poppy's just an acquaintance, a passerby. Poppy, he bellowed, where are you? Why don't you come back? I need. He bit off the rest of the sentence. Spider spit, he swore out loud. Sticky, slimy, sloppy spider spit. Furious, he jumped out from under the tree, only to sink knee-deep in mud. Complaining bitterly, he shook his paws free. Maybe Poppy's coming now, he thought. I'll meet her halfway, make her hurry, tell her to stop all this drivel about ragweed. Ragweed, he growled. I hate ragweed. He tore down the path he had seen Poppy take. As he went, the rain came down harder. Water poured over his face. He felt like a decaying mushroom. Stupid storm, he shouted. He peered down the path. Then there appeared to be nothing before him but water, mist, mud, and more mud. The porcupine shivered violently, making his quills rattle like a bag of old bones. Better go back to that tree and wait for her there, he decided. It was a little drier there. He started off the way he had come, only to stop abruptly. This isn't right, he growled with rage. Spinning around, he lumbered in another direction, trying to reach the scent of his own tracks. It had vanished. The rain had washed it away. Lost, increasingly frustrated, Iris galloped first this way, then that, in search of the cottonwood tree. Duck-dapple, he shouted up at the clouds, dry up. But the rain continued to fall. Utterly wretched, Iris peered through the gloom until he saw a stand of trees that he thought would protect him. He ran forward. Reaching the trees was easy enough, but which tree should he climb? Confounded by his own anger, he rushed from one to another. The first was too small. The second was too thin. 7 trees later, he found one to his liking. The bark was rough. The foliage was thick. Frantic, Iris crawled past the first layer of branches, the second and the third. This'll do, he murmured, moving forward, a particular large branch. He reached it and spat it down, trying to make as tight a ball of himself as possible. Even so, the rain pelted him. Stupid mouse, he mumbled. No, she's not stupid. She's mean. What kind of friend would leave me in all this muck? She's abandoned me, left me, when I'm her real friend, her only friend. But no, all she thinks about is Ragweed, who's dead. As for me, she keeps telling me I'm old. Old, he shouted. I'm not old. Don't take care of her. Her, help her, love. He stopped. Love? He murmured. I don't love Poppy. I hate Poppy, he shouted. I hate love. Bursting with rage, the porcupine scrambled down from his tree and began to gallop as fast as he could. Where he was running, he had no idea, no more than he knew if the water dripping from his cheeks was rain or something else. What do you think? Jealous because he wants to be her best friend? Rye's jealous because she was in love with his brother, Ragweed? Goodness, what's gonna happen in our story? Poor Poppy. What's she gonna do? We'll have to wait and see tomorrow. Goodbye.